What is going on, my YouTube friends, my Patreon friends, my audio nerds, man? I think this is gonna be a fun one. So Monty sent me on Discord sleep tokens monitor engineer for sleep token. This is on Nick Dela Cruz's, right? Did I get that right? Nick Dela Cruz's channel. I'll have the link to the channel and this video in the description box, y'all. I would love if y'all are showing a fellow tech nerd a little bit of love, a little bit of support. And with the new Sleep Token record out, I really want to check it out. I really want to dive into it. I know Gabby from One Direction and Bill Murray was on one of the songs. And like, I'm a big Gabby fan. I'm a big saxophone fan. So this is all working out for me. But I really haven't done that much Sleep Token. I just happen to love technicians, bro. Like, one of the things, I'll keep this really short and we'll get into it. One of the things I really want to promote on my channel is like the work and effort that goes into supporting musicians to put on these performances, put on these projects. And myself, I've been mostly a front of house engineer for 17 years now. A little bit of a hiatus in the middle, but kind of back at it now. And I've done lots of monitor work for lots of festivals and lots of touring acts. So I'm going to try to add a little bit of my kind of mojo to this and see if I can't make some things maybe a little bit more clear for some audiences. And if you're here just to support Sleep Token, man, welcome. I'm looking forward to jumping into some more. Monty, thank you for the suggestion and putting this on my radar. Let me pull this up, y'all. I am listening on, I have a partnership with Westone Audio. I am listening on my M40s. I'll have the link to them in the description box with the discount code and everything. They've been great. They are like specifically for in-ear monitoring for musicians and stuff. I use them lots for like tracking demos in my studio and stuff like that as well. But I just thought that the two kind of went together kind of conveniently. So let's do this, y'all. Let me make sure I can see my audio. Make sure y'all can hear it.
I'm sweaty. You don't want to do that.
Monitor techs are always dope. Always dope.
I'm here with Sam Schmidt. Sam Schmidt is monitors for...
Sleep Token.
Oh my gosh! Say it again.
Sleep Token.
The fact that I'm sitting here, actually standing here right now, it blows my mind because this was something that was not going to happen before at all. So thank you for having me here. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah.
You have a very, very cool job.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm biased. I think it's cool too. So
I was going to ask which side of the snake you prefer, but I'm assuming it's this side. Have you done this side of the snake?
No. Yes. Yeah.
You've done front of house before?
Front of house. Yeah. That's a passion project. Monitors is what I'm good at.
What got you into monitors?
It really is usually one or the other, y'all. Like a monitor tech that I used to work with, shout out to my friend Richie. He always felt like he was like the extra member of the band, the fifth member, the sixth member of the band, right? And like you're really up there taking care of everyone, because if your monitors suck, your performance will suffer. Your performance might not suck, but it will suffer. It's pretty rare that like on a loud stage or in a loud venue that you can get away with performing without hearing yourself. And lots of people have very good like intuition for pitch and stuff like this. Sometimes even timing. Some drummers are really good at like timing. They're like freaking metronomes. But you need some reference, man. You really need some reference. What he's saying with like the other side of the snake is you plug all the microphones, all your inputs into a box, usually on the stage around like the drum kit or beside the drum kit. And that has two tails that come out. Nowadays it's digital. You could probably have multiples, but back in my day it was like all analog. And you had two sets of tails come out. One goes out into the front, FOH or front of house. That was my job. The other tails go into the monitor desk. So anything that I would do at front of house, like if I'm gain staging funny or if I'm compressing something or EQing or affecting something, it won't have any effect on the stage monitors, right? In some smaller situations, smaller clubs, smaller setups, sometimes you're stuck with running monitors from front of house as well, off like buses or auxiliaries. And anything that I do now to a vocal channel, say, will also be in your monitor mix. So it's a little bit tougher that way. In pro shows, though, it's all separated. Looks like we got Pro Tools running here. This could be tracks. It's probably recording. Lots of bands will record just clean feeds, and then they can like use it as, you know, kind of like playback tapes or like feedback tapes, I guess. You can listen and make sure that you're doing everything well. Your transitions were smooth. The set was smooth. Maybe if you have some like tough areas, you can figure out where to like work on them. But lots of people recording into that. That might be what that is. That could just be like a channel view for these touchscreens. I think that this was a Quantum 5, I think I saw. Sick consoles, man, like crazy consoles. It does have, I believe these are touchscreens on it too. It could just be another window for that. So I'm not entirely sure. We'll probably get into that.
Monitors, man.
Really, it was just availability. Like the front house band I work with, asking Alexandria, they were basically taking a few months off. So a buddy of mine needed a fill-in guy, and I did. And that's actually where I met the Sleep Token boys.
What got you into running sound?
Man, I've always been passionate about technical things, so I've always been like really learning anything computer related. I've just been fascinated about it since I was a kid. I started programming C++ stuff when I was young, and audio was kind of the thing that you couldn't really see, but you could feel and see, work with faders, gain, stuff like that. I didn't really know what any of it did, but I grew up in a church environment, so like house of worship.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
so
standard.
basically my parents were like,
Lots of musicians, lots of technicians come out of churches. Usually, like, creme de la creme come out of churches, because not only do you have to deal with, like, new musicians, different musicians, but a ton of musicians. Like, in some of that gospel stuff, man, you have, like, a choir of everybody, man. Everybody. Lots of, and, like, dope drummers, dope guitar players, rhythm sections. Singers are amazing. Like, a lot of talent walks out of those churches and gets into, like, tour gigging and stuff like that, right?
like tech stuff, go run the soundboard. And I had no idea
and
what I was
churches
doing.
are always in need of people, so
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure you didn't have any lack of work to do.
So I learned real quick what gain and EQ and stuff like that just through getting involved with my church.
How old were you at that point?
I was 12.
12 getting into it.
Yeah.
Do you remember the console that you were using?
It was a Mackie something.
Of course it was.
It was a Mackie something.
I feel like every church had a Mackie or an Allen Keith something at that time.
I don't remember exactly what it was. We didn't have any outboard. We did have a graphic EQ for little adjustments.
Fancy.
But,
Graphic EQ, like if it was a 30 band or if it was, I can't remember what the other tiers are. We always had 30 bands. It's just for basically tuning your PA. So if you're pushing a vocal really loud, like you're just railing that fader. Sorry for my language. You're pushing that fader really hard. You sometimes start to get like feedback. So say it's like, 1.2K, then you can go to your graphic EQ and just duck that down a couple of dB, and it should hopefully alleviate that feedback. You don't really want to be like burying stuff unless it's really ugly, but like you should look at some other things, maybe different speakers or a different setup of your speakers, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, just like a couple dB here and there, man. You can clean up a PA, and like outboard gear is sweet, but it's also kind of blinding in a sense. Like I'm a big fan of reverbs and delays, which I used to use as outboard, and now in digital consoles is usually baked into it. But yeah, just like an EQ, man, is like that's kind of like a standard. You kind of need your EQ to tune your room, right?
yeah.
Like high, mid, low?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you started off doing front of house.
Yep.
And I was sure that church didn't have monitors at that time, so it wasn't even...
There was no need for
When
that,
did you
yeah.
learn about monitors?
I learned about monitors when I actually moved to Nashville. So I moved to Nashville after working for a ministry. So 90% of my experience is house of worship early on, right?
Okay.
That's what I was fueled by. I loved it. I loved the people. So I basically, when I graduated high school and went to college, I started working for a ministry in Texas. And that was where I really got involved. Started working with bands as a monitor engineer for a touring ministry, essentially.
Okay.
So it was fun. It was great. I would meet some of my icons, like favorite idols, like, oh, I'm mixing monitors for 1,000-foot crutch. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm 18, 19, like doing this. It's great.
Like we did a show for 1,000-Foot Crutch in a band I used to tour with. Cutlass and Stellar Cart. There's a couple others too.
So I started really learning the chops.
It's right there.
Yeah, exactly. It's right there. That snare drum's so loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, just started working. I moved to Nashville and then started working for more bands doing strictly monitors. And then really always wanted to get to the front of house side of the snake. And did that. I started doing that, 22, 23. When I was 22, 23. I'm 33 now.
Okay.
And I really found...
He's a year older than me, and he started a year before me. Interesting. He started when he was 12. I started when I was 13. At least like dabbling and being around it, being influenced by it. And then I moved into front of house pretty early. Like I was a full-time front of house technician at a performance center or like a bar that did performances when I turned 17, or right around like 17 and a half, I guess. And then when I was 18, I was like full-time, 6 nights a week, 2 gigs on Fridays and Saturdays type thing. And I was like majority of the time front of house. If I was working with 2 of our other kind of partner companies, sometimes they're like the owners or the FOH guys there would be at front of house, and I would do monitors for them, usually a little bit of lights too, but it wasn't too often. We had 2 really solid monitor techs who like were passionate about monitors. And it's really interesting, man. Like he was talking about being really into like the tech stuff and everything. And there's kind of it seems like there's 2 personalities that come into it. One is like where you're really into the sciences, the physics of it, like just you eat, sleep, and breathe technology. The other is like where it's more of like an art form, and I can't say if one is better than the other because I've heard great on both sides, but it's just like interesting how some people are like to the textbook, they love the tech, they probably do lots of like install work and stuff like that where like you're actually positioning speakers in buildings for like your best coverage and like polarity and everything. And then the other side is like I just want to make music. That's kind of like where I fell into. I understand all the physics and stuff. I understand all, like proximity, polarity, like all the weird shit that goes into it. But for me, it was just like, how do I take what I have and make it sound the way that I feel like it should sound, or to like to move me through music? And I'm obviously going to speak more passionately about the art side because that's like where I come from. But I'm not trying to take away from people who have like that really technical background. Like our friend here, man, he's much more successful than I am in this crew. He's touring with Sleep Token, right? So
On my groove, because you asked me earlier off camera, like which do you prefer, front house or monitors? And I love monitors because of the technical aspect of it.
Sure.
It's more of like, this is the quarterback, that's the artistic, like final brush strokes. You're the quarterback, like launching this thing, this entire show, really.
I mean, you got less people, but the only bummer is like those small people are like your paychecks. So
Exactly. Just like with anything, like guitar techs, drum techs, any of that, you are closer to the artist, which can be a blessing, can be a curse. You know, as long as you're paying attention, all that good stuff, it's usually a blessing.
Yeah.
Usually.
I actually don't think that is Pro Tools anymore. I do think that that's going to be an extension of what he's got going on here. You can see his like API channel strip over here, so like some sweet plugins. Yeah, it's dope, man. It's dope.
It's interesting. I've done monitors myself, and it's sometimes there's a disconnect between what the artist wants and how they can communicate that.
Yes.
And I find that sometimes artists are frustrated with stuff, and it's my phrase was always like, I can't fix what I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell me. You can tell me in colors, you can tell me in shapes, just give me something to where I can give that back. Don't just sit there in frustration and not give me anything like that.
Yeah, that's 1,000% true. I find that mixing monitors, for me, my interpretation of it, is 80%, 75% psychology, 25% actual what you know, right?
Sure.
And somebody told me that really early on in my career, and I still think it's correct, because you can know how to communicate, but if that person's not communicating with you, you can't always just go up to them and say, yo, you're not talking to me, what do you actually need? Because they might not even know how to tell you that.
Yeah.
So you're kind of reading their mind, and it's like trying to figure out what in their position, what are they hearing, what are they not hearing, what's missing, what's too much.
Yeah.
And then what I have found that works for me anyway, is talking to him usually after a sound check of like, hey, I was listening to your mix, I noticed this. If you're clearly like looking uncomfortable, is maybe too much click, or everything's just too much in your mix and everything's just blending together too, poorly. And just have.
You're talking about in-ears there. You'd never have click track in like an acoustic speaker, right? But there are cues, right? Like, so if a singer is singing really, really, really loud all the time, maybe they're a really loud singer, more than likely they can't hear themselves. If they're rushing, or if they're kind of singing in and out of tune, maybe their vocal is too loud and you have to turn it down a little bit so they can hear the rest of the mix, right? Another one, especially in acoustic monitors or like drum fills, is if they keep asking for like more and more, say, electric guitar, it might be because the bass guitar is too loud, right? So actually having, like, we call that like a foldback, when you actually have usually a matched monitor from what you have on the stage. Like if you've got like an RF or like a Dave Rat speaker or something on stage, you have one beside you as a monitor tech, and you could do what's called PFL, post fader listen, or AFL, all fader listen, after fader listen. It doesn't matter. And you can listen to their actual mix through your speaker beside you, and you can go, oh shit, like the bass is just freaking ripping. If I just turn that down a little bit with stage volume, now you can hear your guitars more. So it is kind of like a balancing act. And musicians are musicians. They're not technicians. Not all the time. There are some great techs who are musicians at the same time. Some people have a very firm and like competent understanding of it, but not everyone. Like the major majority doesn't, right? So some people will be like, oh, it sounds like it doesn't sound clear. It sounds muffled. And you kind of go like, what the hell does that mean? And you go listen to it. It's like, oh, like this is a really like 500 hertz heavy box. So you can start like peeling that out of your mids, kind of make a smiley face out of it. Now you get a lot of clarity, still a little bit of warmth. So yeah, like what he's talking about here is really, really, really interesting. The other side of that too is like the psychological side. Is sometimes like lead vocalists will be, can you turn my vocal up just a little bit? And you like put your hand on the dial or on the fader, and they go, yeah, that's good. and you just think to yourself like, I didn't do anything. But sometimes that's just them like listening for it now. Like they can hear their vocal and now they're like attuned to it, or they're paying attention to it. And that's all it takes for them to be good. I'm not saying that you should try to trick people. I'm just saying sometimes people trick themselves. So it is what it is. But if it sounds good, doesn't really matter how it looks, as long as it sounds good.
You start the conversation in a non-threatening way, 90% of the time will allow them to have a conversation, like relax and be like, oh, thank God he noticed too, you know? And that has been my...
So you're a little more proactive than reactive with that. You're not just waiting for them to tell you up or down.
No,
you're actually
you have to be proactive, in my opinion, like, because if you're not proactive, especially if you're just buried, like doing this and like tweaking things and they're trying to get your attention, I usually proactively, like, if I notice, and we have talkbacks on this, for this specific band, we have talkbacks all around the stage, so all the crew can talk to each other, all the band can talk to the crew.
And these are like redundant mics. You might have like a SM58 or something on like stage left, stage right, and at the drummer that doesn't actually go through front of house. It would just go to like comm sets or headphones. So if I'm the drummer and I can't see you, it's like pitch black, or maybe there's obstruction between us, I can just lean over this microphone and go, hey man, I need a little bit more of Steve's guitar in my in-ears. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Or like whatever, right? It's fairly seamless, aside from you might see someone lean over to a microphone. But it's good. Like, especially in the day of like in-ears, bro, like it is wild how separated you could be, because your stage volume almost doesn't matter anymore. And on a lot of these big stages, stage volume is quite quiet, just like based on real estate, having amps off stage or understage, using profilers like Kempers or Line 6s, Helixes. Like there's just not a lot of stage volume to depend on. So sometimes you really need to be back and forward with your monitor crew. And what's also interesting is, although it's kind of the premise of in-ears is like perfect, like, you know, it should be isolating, it should be basically the same as it was the night before. The stage has a lot to do with it, the like crowd has a lot to do with it, the environment, are you indoor or outdoor? Like there's a lot of factors that actually play into it, and that's kind of what he's getting at here, right? There's like, he needs to be in constant communication without interrupting the show. And it sounds like they got a great handle on it.
Now I can just punch in at any time and just say, like, hey, you feeling happy with snare? Do we need to fatten it up a little bit?
Yeah.
Like, and you know, two will tell me, like, yeah, let's give it a little more ugga-dugga or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
It's interesting because I think that monitors is so much more communication driven, and you actually have good communication in front of house, whereas, you know, you've got thousands of people for it, but this you really have to understand verbal ways of communicating and also non-verbal ways of communicating.
Exactly.
And for the new people that are here, I mean, there's obviously, if you watch concerts, you'll see the up down or this up down or this up down with it. Or there's some other ones that sometimes. Do you guys have any ones that are a little bit different, or is it just that simple? Or do you guys just mainly use talkback?
I would say this band specifically uses strictly talkbacks. Now, if there's a big problem, like let's say a quad cortex is, you know, wigging out, they switch to the backup, but the backup hasn't been leveled like the main has. That happened the other night. Like all I have to do is like see them, and they'll point at their guitar and go down, but that's a last resort, especially for this band. This kind of takes away from the mystery, I guess you could say, of it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's everything's done via talkbacks, side stage. They'll jump on their text talkbacks and say, everything's great. Can I get this or this little adjustment, tweak, whatever they need? And likewise, like I'll pop into their ears. If there was a moment that I knew something was off for them, I'll pop in their ears and I'll just say, like, thumbs up if you're good. And, you know, you'll just see a little thumbs up, and they won't even look my way. They don't need to, because they're engaged in the crowd, and that's their job.
Absolute fire.
You know, stuff like that.
I remember one time I was running monitors for a pretty big artist, and it was a one-off for it. And I heard rumors that artist was really tough to deal with, and it was very difficult, but I found that it wasn't that the person was tough, they just knew what they wanted.
Being specific and precise,
Correct.
Which, if you're not prepared for that, which is easy to, you know, miss that step. If you're not prepared, it's easy to like feel like they're being difficult, but they're just trying to get you to the point where they feel comfortable.
Correct. And sometimes I found that it was actually easier, as long as they could communicate that, like, cool, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We just got to find that spot
it's
for
it.
It's
going to be a little bit of a journey, but we'll get there,
So how much of it now is a set and forget from pre-pro, and you're just kind of monitoring, or are you actually writing this, and are you doing different snapshots for everything? Is it changing per song, or is it pretty same the whole time?
So I'm a little more old school when it comes to monitor mixing. Front of house, completely different story, but for monitor mixing, I do not recall anything with snapshots. Now that can be a blessing and a curse if you're dealing with other problems and you know that there's an adjustment that needs to.
Snapshots are basically like you can save a time of your show or your show file, and you can open up new ones seamlessly per song, even if you want to. So if you have time changes or like tempo changes within a song, and you need like a certain quarter note delay to switch to a dotted quarter note delay or a half note delay, you can just have that happen instantaneously with your snapshot. Or like room size, reverb size, instead of running like 4, 5, or 6 reverb sends off your console, you can just have it baked into your snapshot. And when we go to the ballad, now we have the big Aerosmith Cathedral kind of snare drum, or the ballad snare drum, or whatever, right? So for monitors, you think that would be pretty similar too. Like, tracks on this one, I want lots of keyboard and a little bit less of like just sound effects. And then on the next one, I want more sound effects, a little bit less of the keyboards. But he's going to explain his kind of approach to that now. And it's very interesting, man. Very like analog mindset.
Like a side snare, like he's hitting the rim. So maybe the drummer needs that up a bit for a certain song. And there's problems happening. That can be a problem if you're not recalling things in snapshots. But again, I'm more old school. I like to control everything that goes in their ears. I don't ever want to accidentally send something, even if there was a problem, let's say there was a level problem with something. I just control everything. So I do run snapshots, but mainly for notes. So in my note page, you can see like boss vocal down guitar for guitars, SPD goes up for front of house, and mute for strike. And I just keep all my notes there. Kill downstage mic, guitars down a touch for, and then like it's the note and then for who the position is.
So kill downstage mic. So your center mic especially kind of becomes like a room mic on the stage for your drums when the vocalist walks away from it, right? When they kill that, if they're having like a big breakdown or a big whatever, then now you don't have all that like trashy like cymbals and crap going on in your ears while they're trying to do the breakdown, right? So it's interesting. And to his point, if he did that as a snapshot, what happens if he's distracted, a bass guitar falls over, someone's drunk and got back there and he's trying to push them away, like anything could happen, and he doesn't hit that next snapshot. Now they don't have vocals in the in-ears, and that is a huge problem, right? So yeah, good for him, man.
And that's kind of, and then apparently my last show, the bass quad was too hot. So I made a note of it right there. I was like, bass is hot.
So a couple questions for this band specifically. In-ears, monitors, both? What are we doing?
So they are all on 1964 IEMs, and we do run side fills for them. But the side fills are just a touch. It's like a blend because they all have really good hearing, and they like to feel it, but they don't want it to be to the point where it's like affecting like their mix on stage, and they want to be able to hear what their mix is essentially. So they want to feel it, but without it affecting them.
Yeah.
So like effectively, what'll happen is, especially like when you blow up, right? Sleep Token is still like kind of young and they're like this size of performing, right? So when you come from like a tighter stage or a tighter rehearsal area and you move to a stadium, all of a sudden you can't like feel that kick drum like just beating into you like you could in a smaller club, right? Like a 500 or 1,000 person cap. Now you're playing for 30,000 people. The stage, like just real estate again, is just gonna be so different, right? So having a kick drum that like beats into you, a snare drum that's like maybe not abrasive because they have good hearing, but you can just feel it like punch you, like rattle your shirt a little bit. You switch over to the guitars, you do like a big glissando or whatever they're called on guitars, and you can actually feel that happen. Like that is so important to a good performance, right? Because otherwise it's just kind of bland, right? It's the same as having crowd mics so that you can hear the crowd. The better earphones you get or in-ears you get, the more and more separated you are from just like ambient noise. And eventually it gets to a point where it's kind of isolating. And so we started mixing in, everybody started mixing in crowd mics. So you can actually engage with the crowd. If you're having people sing your parts or sing back and forwards with you, you can actually hear that instead of just hoping that it picks up loud enough to break the gate threshold or whatever on your mic, right? So side fills just is like a nice touch. It sounds a little bougie, is a little bougie. Pretty sweet move though.
Yeah.
So yeah, all on in-ears, no wedges.
Okay. How many mixes?
Including ADA, because the quarterback station, all he does out front is front of house. So I do anything ADA related for like ASL, sign language, stuff like that. If you include all that, I think it's 21 mixes.
Wow.
But as far as like
Techs also, I'm assuming, have packs as well?
So techs all have packs. So we have 3 techs. We have Billy, the guitar tech. We have Sam Hallett, the playback and drum tech. And then we have Eric over on stage right, and he does bass. And basically they each have their own mix. That way they can pan, click, or whatever, however they like it. And then as far as band members on stage, we have 7. So 7 mixes of.
That's people. Right, because there's the vocalists as well.
There's the 4 principals and then the 3 choir. Yep.
Got it. Man, it must have been really cool to be able to be with this band and kind of see their trajectory, because this band is like taking off. It has been really cool to see. Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, how'd you get connected with these guys?
So it was a tour. I was filling in for a friend doing monitors, and it was actually in this moment, it was Sleep Token and Nothing More was the band I was working with. Sleep Token was opening for everybody. And it was just 2 crew members at that point and the 4 band guys. So there was only 6 of them total. And they were like, during set change, I would just help them out every day and just help coil up their, cables, help them, set up. There was days where
Dude's dope.
I just like have my IEM vacuum out and I would just like, hey guys, you want me to clean your ears? Like, what ears are you using? I've never seen these before. And they were like, oh, these are Cosmics. They're from the UK. And I'd be like, oh, quick, that's pretty cool. Never seen those before. I'd clean their ears for them. Then I showed them like comply wraps. Like they're like, our ears aren't, one guy was like, the right side's just not sealing. I was like, here, try comply wrap and might tighten it up for you.
Okay, explain to people who don't know what comply wrap is.
Comply wrap is just a little bit of foam that is adhesive and it can go around your in-ear piece. And it, you think of it like an earplug essentially. You squish it down, put it in your ear, it'll expand and it'll seal everything up. It's also really good for moisture. Like if you sweat, it'll keep moisture out of the armatures. So.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would just help them with that every day. And then eventually at the end of the tour, they're like, if we can ever afford a monitor guy, this was Tom, the front house guy. He's like, if we can ever afford a monitor guy, you're coming with us. And I was like, dope.
Yeah.
And then less than a year later, here I am.
Here you are, man.
That was 2 years ago, so about a year later, I was working with them. So I've been with them for about a year now. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to engineers that are either want to be doing monitors or starting off doing monitors? And then also what advice would you give to bands that are wanting to do in-ears and they're having maybe some issues with that?
So the first thing I would say to engineers that are wanting to learn how to do monitors, and like a little tip of the tip is, for monitors, you can't be the guy that says no all the time to everyone. Like you have to be all things to all people, and even if it's all at the same time, you have to be all things to all people and smile, because people will never forget when you scream at people. Like they'll never forget that. I mean, you could be nice 100 days a week or 100 days a year, but if you scream that one time, they're going to remember that. You just can't do that.
Yeah.
Be constantly learning, of course, but just learn how to be all things to all people and be a friendly face, and that'll go further than I ever thought it would take me. So. Yeah. And then as far as bands thinking about IEMs, just do it. Okay. You protect your hearing. That's first and foremost. If this is your career and your livelihood, you protect your hearing. You're not exposing yourself to like loud acoustic noises. Like, let's be honest, drum kits are not quiet. So protect your hearing, because when you get older, you will regret not doing that. I know it's expensive, but buy once, cry once. You can pick any. It doesn't really matter which vendor you pick. You're gonna be happy with just the isolation more than the tonalities of the different manufacturers.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about bands that are afraid of that isolation and boxed-in feeling?
I mean, IEM companies, technology has come a long way. 64 audio is what I use for these guys. I own, not a brag, but I own 4 sets of in-ears. Like I've got JH, I've got 64, I've got different sets as different options, but I think 64 is probably the ones that do the best ambient let-in. Like you can change your filters out to let ambient stage noise back in your ears.
Yeah.
And that's a good one. If you're like, I want a little more isolation, I want to protect my hearing, but I still want to hear a little something from the stage, 64 has a great option for that. But I know JH has recently done some stuff. FIR has incorporated a lot of that technology. Like it's come a long way from back in the days. I think that was a thing of the past, and it's not something you do with as much now.
Okay.
Yeah, I've come a long ways, y'all. Like from my first Sures that I spent I don't even want to tell y'all how much I spent on them. Way too much money. I could not perform with them. Like I was a young performer. I filled in some bands, and I did perform in a band for a while. And I actually ditched the in-ears because I just did not like the tones of them. And to kind of reiterate my story, I owned one of the audio companies one of the 3 that were in the city at the time. I was best friends with the other 2. Like the monitor techs and I would spend like hours trying to get them like dialed. We could get the levels good, but the tone sounded like shit. And nowadays, man, like I performed with a band that I mixed front of house for, Freeze the Fall, and just like basically faders up, a little bit of like pushing some stuff around for a mix, and I was blown away at the quality that like I was getting in the ears. I was like, oh, I would do this 100% of the time. I would never want to go back to acoustic monitors. And like that's only over the span of maybe like 12 years even. So some folks who had them before me probably have a way more like drastic experience like in the quality change, but super impressive, man.
Audience mics, great solution to that as well if your monitor engineer has much now.
Okay.
Audience mics, great solution to that as well if your monitor engineer has 2 or 4 inputs. You can have 2 to 4 audience mics on the downstage and just blend that in. You can see it. I have it actually right here. I run it like as a VCA control for everyone.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, it seems like we're about to get.
It's about to get loud.
It's about that time for it.
Yeah.
If people want to follow you and follow your career, where can they follow you?
I'm not super active on social media.
Okay.
Catch me if you can. You'll see me if you see me.
Well, come to a Sleep Token show near you, and you might see the guy on the side of the stage. Maybe poke him with a stick or something with that. Yeah. Bro, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. And yeah. Or
sick interview, man. Honestly, like the dream. I would love to like give some front of house techs, some stage managers some love. Let's see what else. Yeah, check out Nick Dela Cruz, man. That was cool. I will definitely be watching some more videos. Hope you don't mind if you see this, brother. Hope you don't mind me reacting and breaking down to your video. But this is cool, man. I don't know how long this was. Half an hour. Sleep Token friends. Anyone make it to the end? Appreciate you all. I'll have the link to this in the description box, and I will see you on the next one.